Thank you so much, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. Again, my name is China Darrington, and I am a person in long-term recovery. I'm so happy to be able to say that. Thank Captain Cody, and I want to thank everybody involved, including all the funders that put this summit together. This is vital work that we're doing out there. I can't tell you how many of us haven't made it to this side, struggling, and hopefully in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to give you some insight of what it was like out there, the desperation, the things that I didn't even know how to ask or advocate for that were out there. Creative funders, creative programming, who knew what I needed before I did. When I had given up hope, they were out there. They were ready for me. So on September 29th, 2003, when I got that window of opportunity, there was a bed, and I could stay there, and I could start to sort it out, start to sort out the debris field that my head was at that point. I didn't immediately be grateful. I wasn't immediately connecting with all of those services because I was shell-shocked. I couldn't even speak. I couldn't make eye contact with people. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that was like that day when I kind of came to and I was like, holy mackerel, what do I do now? But I'm telling you, I had fantastic professionals surrounding me. I had really creative financed and funded programs that were in promising practice stages. They were so new, they weren't evidence-based yet, but you know what? They fit me. And time after time after time, when I came up against programs that said, we don't take this insurance, or it's self-pay, or you don't qualify, they said, no, there's no wrong door. You need help, and we want to provide it for you, and we want to provide it for you now. And I can't tell you how much my life has changed since that moment, and how grateful I am to be able to stand up here and give you a little insight into how many desperate people want that exact help and have been denied it. I can't tell you what it's like to live out there, but man, it's not a place filled with light. Okay, so my descent into opiate use disorder began when I was 16 years of age, which is neither young nor old, it's just an age. It lasted until I was 32. That's 16 years. So I have 16 years where I didn't use drugs. I had another 16 that I did. 14 years in my recovery, and I know I have to do it one day at a time, but I can't wait until I can stand up here and say I have 16 years in one day, because then I will have more time on this side than on that side. In that time, I interacted with law enforcement, with the courts. I faced felony charges. I became a mother, and I faced issues within the child welfare system, because my addiction would not allow me to put my child first, even though I desperately wanted to. In that time, I lost many things. I lost jobs, I lost houses, I lost the ability to shelter myself and my family, to care for myself and my family, and probably most impactfully, I lost hope. I lost hope that I could ever change. I lost hope that there was help out there that could help someone like me. I lost hope that I was worth anything. I became very, very ill, in body, in mind, in soul, in spirit, and socially. I lost hope that recovery was possible. But unbeknownst to me, in the background, there were really good people planting the seeds and tilling the field and making sure it was fertile, so that when I arrived, the professionals and the clinicians and the administrators, they hadn't forgotten that there were so many of us out there suffering. I desperately wanted help, but my brain was very, very compromised, and it showed in my behavior. I had the good fortune to be at a very bad place at a very bad time, in a very bad section of town, surrounded by some very, very bad folks who took advantage on a day of my desperation and my drug seeking. I was attacked that day, violently and sexually, and I left surviving with 4 levels of my spine fractured. I had a moment of clarity during this incident where I realized I didn't want to die like this. I didn't want to leave that as the ending message to my 4-year-old child who I was not taking care of because of that addiction. That 4-year-old loved me desperately and wanted me to come home and be their mama. I survived, and shortly after that, I learned that I was pregnant with my second child. I was pregnant, I was homeless, I was 16 years into opiate use disorder. I'm unable to take care of my child. I'm pretty much the poster child for that addict. That one, right? The one that's not people we know, people we interact with, that addict. Thank God for that. Thank God for that day. That pregnancy, when it was discovered on September 29, 2003, was prior to this wave and surge of opiate epidemic. There were still beds for pregnant women then. I work with countless pregnant women right now who are on wait lists. What do you think they're doing until they get that bed? I had competent and compassionate professionals surrounding me in that treatment center, in that residential. They were rock stars, and they were bulldogs in getting what they needed to provide the services in the flexible and fluid way they needed to help the most people. They knew that by working diligently, a little bit stretched out from the normal conventional way of doing things, it allowed people to find their personal pathway to recovery, and it stuck, so I didn't have to go back over and over and over again. They knew if they did it right this time, they could save us all money by not having to pay for it again 6 months down the way. But they knew that what I needed to stabilize and get some solid foundation under my feet was gonna take some time. It wasn't gonna be a quick thing. Again, I was very, very sick. In body, in mind, spiritually, and socially. So, addressing the health aspect, the biological aspect, we got the substances out of my body and we assessed the damage to my physical condition, took care of any infections. Emotionally, you kept me safe. You gave me a safe and consistent, stable place to lay my head at night. When I would wake up having those night terrors, you told me it's okay. We can get through this together. In spirit, you helped me connect to the hope and the possibility that of what could come next. Recovery, family, and future. I never thought I'd survive my addiction. The thought of thinking a year in advance was terrifying. Socially, you taught me the things I needed to connect to my world again. I was not barred access to employment. I was not barred access to safe and stable housing to provide for and raise my family. I learned that vocation and hobbies and purpose and passion and vitality are far more satisfying than any drug I've ever used. Any drug. I got to go to residential treatment, and when I was discharged, I was almost 8 months pregnant. And I was terrified. I'd been to treatment 6 times before. What's gonna be different this time? Every time I got out, I used again. 8 months pregnant, I'm desperate, I don't wanna use, but I don't know how not to. You guys told me, we have a transitional housing program for moms and their kids. You can stay there for up to 2 years. I'm thinking, really? I'd never heard of anything like this. Sign me up. I also thought, why would I need 2 years? I'd gone to 28-day treatment, 30-day treatment, maybe 60 days of treatment. When I heard 2 years, who could possibly need that? But when my child and I graduated 2 years later from that program, I'm here to tell you, my brain was just starting to heal. I was just starting to be confident that I could make consistent good decisions on behalf of myself and my families. Thank you, neuroplasticity. You gave me the safety and the sanctuary needed to start to address the trauma. The childhood trauma and the trauma of 16 years of living in active addiction. That was the monster that I thought lived under my bed. That was the reason I always went back to the drugs. You said, let's take a look at that. So we're no longer plucking the yellow head off that dandelion and being surprised when it grows back. We're going deep and getting that sucker out from the roots. My recovery did happen. It happened because of creative funders and foundations like yourself, and you believed in me long before I believed in myself. Since then, I've re-entered the workforce. I've reunited with my oldest child. I've made a positive, open adoption plan for my second child, my birth son, and I've worked really hard to make birth mother a role of strength and passion and connectedness. I became first a peer supporter, and then a recovery coach, and then a recovery coach trainer, and now I work with a team of recovery coaches and healthcare professionals doing on-demand medication-assisted treatment in our emergency departments in my home county, Summit County, Akron, Ohio. I love what we do. I'm a trainer for the award-winning Ohio Child Welfare Training Program. I've written and I've designed many curriculums on the intersection between addiction, trauma, recovery, pathways to recovery, and how addiction affects the families that are involved in the child welfare system. I sit on the board for the organization which provided my housing for my family all those years ago, and we've since expanded from, I think we had 37 units of housing back in 2003 when I was involved in the program. We now have 327 units in 7 Ohio counties. I'm a homeowner, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a dedicated voter. I'm devoted to recovery advocacy and recovery support services, and I'm vocal in my support towards moving our systems from a treatment or illness model to the recovery-oriented systems of care, right? That nitty-gritty, dirty boots, dirty hands, let's get people stable where they're at. I can't wait to see the end of substance use disorders with being treated with any sort of stigma. I want to bash that stigma down and have addictions and substance use disorder be treated like any public health concern. So that when you start to notice that you're kind of zigging in a pathway that you didn't anticipate, you come forward and ask for help sooner. Because it's so much easier to treat 6 months into this than 16 years into it. In my home county, where I ran the streets and did my communities the worst damage, I am currently the project coordinator for the Summit County Opiate Task Force. Can't believe they let me do this. Our County Adams Board Executive Director is named Jerry Craig, and he was the Executive Director back when I needed the services, and he's always been incredibly progressive, inviting the people who needed the most help to the table, making sure that you didn't do anything about us without us. He's always allowed us to add our voice and our experience. He was an early adopter of recovery-oriented systems of care, and he's dedicated to help the most people in our community by being flexible and fluid in that financing and support. Through the coordination on the Summit County Opiate Task Force, I get to work with some of the best and brightest people in my community. We have subcommittees for healthcare, criminal justice, policy and advocacy, public awareness, young people both in a prevention aspect and young people in recovery. And I'm really proud about working with our family support subcommittee, trying to figure out how we can better support families who have lost loved ones to overdose. What do they need? How do we support people who are currently struggling with trying to love someone who's currently embedded in their substance use disorders? And then what can we do to just better make our communities more aware, so that if they never anticipated that anybody in their family would need treatment or need recovery services, again, the stigma has been ended, so they feel that they can come forward and ask for that help. And in my community, I get to work with a lot of wonderful community foundations and organizations that provide that funding, that really see, okay, our big systems do this, but there's gaps here, and there's gaps here, and there's gaps here, and what can we do to bridge those gaps, to catch the most people? Sometimes I always feel like when we're treating opiate use disorder, or trying to treat opiate use disorder, we've got agency over here that has a great knot in the fishing, the net to catch the fish. And over here we have another knot. And then over here we've got another one. But there's huge gaps in the middle and people slip through. And so what we're trying to do is tighten that back up. Make sure that we're being interdependent and collaborative so that less people fall through those gaps. It was foundations and organizations like you that saw me at my worst as lost potential. You saw how it affected my parents as a child struggling. You saw how it affected my child to have their parents struggling. You saw how if I was not a contributing member to the tax revenue base, our communities were missing out. You believed in me long before I had the capacity to even dream that this life could be. You told me that I had worth. You told me I could be a good parent. You told me I could heal. And you told me that the services that I needed were a good investment. They were an investment for not just myself as an individual, but for us as a culture and as a society and as a world. And again, I'm here to tell you, it's so much better on this side. Thank you for letting me back into this. Thank you again for giving me just a few minutes of your time as we kick off the SAMHSA Region 5 Opiate Funders Summit. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you guys do, for your attention and commitment to this issue, for your connection and for your ability to discern where the wise use of resources can be best used. You have helped in innumerable ways the more than 25 million people in America who are in long-term recovery. I hope you enjoy the rest of this summit. Thank you very much.